Hey guys, it's David. So here's what happened is I finished my breakthrough stacking series, and that has been going great for people, and I was pretty happy and a bit relieved to be done for a while making videos. I had a few that I wanted to wrap up that I still want to make and wrap up, but then I sort of accidentally stumbled across a few realizations that led to a pretty major breakthrough, and it's been absolutely amazing. And I shared it with Mike about a week ago, and it's been incredible for him. So I sort of have no choice except for to work on sharing it with you here. Now, I'm not trying to guarantee that this will immediately make perfect sense to you, although some of it will. Like it'll definitely be helpful, and then hopefully we'll get to a pretty major breakthrough with you. Remember the breakthrough methodology, which we'll be following regarding this concept. Like, I'm not going to be teaching about breakthroughs, and this is not about breakthroughs, but of course the methodology of breakthrough stacking is something I always use. And so remember that as we go through this video or this video series, it'll likely be more than one video, that it's not like a step-by-step process where I say step one this, step two that. What we're going to be doing is we have to poke around a little bit, and then we have to build some critical mass, and then at some point you'll break through, it'll make particular sense to you, and then you're still not done. Then you need to integrate and consolidate on the concept. So it's not just kind of intellectually understood and sort of isolated in your mind, but it's integrated throughout your thinking and your actions and so forth, different aspects of life and all that. All right, so I realized a mistake that we're all making. All right, now the law of implication, in general, what we're doing is typically when people want to improve their lives, you could think of them as sort of facing outward. Like if you imagine, if you look at my cursor here, a sort of cone or, I don't know, even triangle. Let's think if I can draw this here on the slide. Hold on. Okay, due to the magic of technology, you did not have to hold on. In real life, you could just sit there and I could pause it and I could make this for you, and then I could hit unpause, and within a split second, we're all ready. Okay, so with the law of implication, normally, or without the law of implication, normally when people want to improve their lives, right, they're generally looking outward in a sense, where if you imagine, let me try to think how I'm saying this here. They figure if they kind of add new knowledge or new skills onto what they have, or new resources, new relationships, that sort of thing, then their life will get better. And generally regarding the idea, if you imagine here are the ideas that somebody already has, and the kind of things that they already identify with, their body, their self, and all that, then normally people aren't really looking over here to fix mistakes, like in their existing body of knowledge. Normally that's offensive to people, the idea that they could be wrong about anything, right? It's very important to people that they're already very intelligent, already very right. And so they identify with this, and they don't want it to, they feel like if it changes, then that's like attacking them. Or if someone says, hey, this idea is wrong in your existing belief system, then again, it feels like they're being attacked generally. The problem with that is that, where did this come from, right? It all just kind of got set up outside of your intention or your conscious. It got set up over the course of your life, not based on some perfect method that you devised and checked and used constantly to make sure that all of your ideas in your mind, starting from when you were very young, were all correct, right? All the little scripts that you run, all the ways that you react to people, and so forth, right? Clearly we have scripts like from our childhood that are maladaptive sometimes. We have beliefs that can be wrong. We have various assumptions and people don't realize how far off this is, your current belief system and what you think is true and assumptions, how far off it is from what it could be in terms of what would make you happiest and most effective, and where you'd have the best impact on other people. People tend to think that they're pretty close, they're close enough, or one way or the other, we just act as if there's really not much opportunity in looking back over here. Like it's almost like takes us backwards or hurts or is just inefficient or something, because people just really don't do it very much. And when they start to, they end up with a kind of tangled mess, right? If people start trying to do what they might call philosophy or or anything like that. It's mostly they'd just rather learn new stuff, even if they think that they're trying to go on a voyage of self-discovery or work on ideas of some sort, or they're thinking. They mostly want to hear new things. They mostly don't realize that they want to fix stuff in their head. Once in a while they do, and that's pretty isolated generally, and it needs to be in just the right person with just the right framing, otherwise it'll feel very threatening or insulting. Sorry, none of this is the actual idea that I'm covering in this series, but it's very important. No, it is relevant and important for having you have a breakthrough with what I'm sharing with you. So, as I mentioned, warning you that we're using the breakthrough methodology, right? This isn't like a step-by-step, here's step one of the idea, here's step two of the idea. Everything I'm talking about is going to be very helpful for you in breaking through with what I have to share with you. And the thing is that what I have to share with you in general with law of implication is so wildly helpful and important. It's so far past what is intuitively possible in terms of improving your ability to be effective and happy and efficient and all that. If people had any idea of how much happier and more effective they could be, if they looked in this direction, if someone could just get inside my head for like an hour or even 5 minutes, it would be so impactful. It would be just mind-shattering, earth-shattering, whatever, life-shattering for people. They would just be willing to, not that I think in these terms, but just to illustrate, I mean, people would pretty much just want to give everything that they had, all their money, whatever, if they had that choice, to just know what I know. You just don't suspect that it's even possible to know the kinds of things that I know and to benefit from that. You may have some pretty damn good glimpse at this point. Like some people, certainly a lot of you, have really given me wonderful feedback, and you're really excited to hear more, I know, and have really benefited from stuff. And so some people might be pretty close to getting a sense of what I potentially have for you. And I'm not selling you anything, by the way. I'm just trying to help you here. There's no like end of this video where I'm like, and here, I have this new course or something like that. That's not the case. As a matter of fact, what I meant to say in the very beginning of the video is that I was looking forward to not making any more videos for a little while. These take really many days of me kind of isolating myself and not spending very much time with my family and so forth to get to do a video. It's a little hard to explain why that's the case. You'd think it'd be easier than that, and it's not that it's difficult or not, but it just is. It takes a certain amount of time. That isn't necessarily difficult to make a video that can particularly radically help people, and it takes a few days. That I'm not in any way saying that that's out of proportion difficult. However, I was perfectly happy to not do it for a little while and just kind of chill out for now. But it's just too important to share this with you. Too important for you. But if you could get inside my life for just a little while, and I'm not in any way saying that you should want to be me or that I'm better than you. What I am saying, though, is that there's a methodology and a mental model that I'm aware of, that if you knew that it was even possible to have such a thing, you would be so motivated to not like nonstop, or at least for whatever amount of time each day that would be efficient, to focus on that sort of thing, maybe an hour or two. After that, you might get kind of a little bit exhausted for that sort of thinking. But whatever it was that you would just kind of want to max out on getting your mind around what I know. I have a sense that it's just way better than you even suspect. Like that if you were to think, oh yeah, maybe if I learn some stuff from David, it'll be such and such amount helpful. It's probably way more than that. And I'm guessing this because of just the amount of time or focus that people spend looking at their trying to figure out how to get their own thinking straight. It's just abysmally low, right? It's just not something that goes on, right? I'm sure that over the holidays, when we got together with people, there was no sensibility whatsoever to spending a few hours each day together with your family or whatever, doing that and trying to get your ideas straight, or getting a methodology for how to get your ideas straight in the first place, and then using that methodology to get your ideas straight. That would have made you much happier and better off compared to anything else that you did. But it's just so outside of what people normally think of doing that we probably just chose not to do it anyway. And I feel it too. I mean, I'm out with people. I had dinner with a friend of our family, and of course, we just talked about random stuff. We didn't talk about how to get our ideas straight. But if they knew, could have gotten in my head for just a few minutes. They would have wanted nothing but to know what I knew. I don't mean that anyone should or wants to be me. You want to be you, but you want to be you adding to that what I know is all I'm saying about this stuff. Okay, so what we're going to be talking about is, it's not easy to capture it just in a phrase or something like that, but there is a way of understanding adaptability, the ability, the idea that in the future, even 5 minutes from now or 1 second from now, but also like a week from now or years from now, you won't feel the same as you do now. But generally, when people think about the future, particularly if we feel like scared about the future, but also people will just overbook themselves too, or overcommit. So it could be, people could be kind of overly optimistic too. And there's a reason for this. I didn't figure this out, the stuff I'll be talking about, by just having an observation or just kind of realizing something on the surface. The only possible way to have figured out what I have for you here is that I had stacked a whole number of other things that I know that other people don't know either. And so it would be like if someone had a microscope before other people did with biology, and then they figured out a whole bunch of things based on that. And then based on those things that they figured out with a microscope that other people didn't have in the first place, then that allowed them to figure out yet another thing. All right. So that's kind of where we're at here. So this isn't like something, oh, I noticed this and I'm going to share it with you because it sounds clever. But because there's a phenomenon in general, not just with adaptability or thinking about how we're going to feel in the future. There's a phenomenon in general where when people observe or think about things, or think about the future, or just look around in the environment, just when you look at a desk or a computer or whatever, you're looking at something, right? You think of like, I'm looking at the computer, or if you're looking at what's going to happen in a meeting tomorrow, or you know, or appointment you have, or some task you need to do tomorrow, and you're thinking how you feel about that, whether it's going to be hard. And notice that if you think about something that you need to do later today, it automatically goes along with a judgment about how difficult it's going to be, whether you're going to succeed, or how you're going to feel about it, whether it's going to feel pleasant or unpleasant or what, right? Like without even really trying, your brain just kind of gives you a guess about that, and you don't even think of it usually as a guess. Usually you think of it as a certainty, right? So when you think about a task that you need to do later, then it feels to you like you're looking at that situation, like at that task. But the very act of looking at something means you're mixing like a perspective with whatever it actually is. So you're not seeing what it is. You're seeing your context, your feelings, your assumptions, and so forth of right now, various beliefs and assumptions. A whole bunch of stuff is getting mixed with whatever that task or whatever the doing of that task really actually is, whatever that kernel is there, whatever that reality is. You're not just seeing it. You're seeing a whole bunch of stuff, a whole bunch of ideas and perspectives and how you feel right now and how much energy you have right now. That's all getting mixed together with whatever that future task is at its core. And you're seeing that whole conglomerate. It's a little bit like if there was like an invisible man in the room and you dumped a bucket of blue paint on him and then you saw him. And if you were like, oh, the invisible man is blue, right? But I mean, he's blue now that you dumped the blue paint on him. But the invisible man was the invisible man and, you know, in some sense remains the invisible man covered with blue paint. But it doesn't mean that the guy is blue, right? If you dumped red paint on him, then he would, quote unquote, be red, right? We also do this with people, where people make incorrect judgments about who to work with and who to be in close relationships with a lot. And that it's pretty shocking what just one or two bad judgments about who to work with or marry or be in a close relationship with or whatever can have an extraordinarily devastating effect on someone's life, or an extraordinarily wonderful effect, right? Or you can just, you know, have a reasonably nice life, but if you would happen to really hop on a particular opportunity with someone, your life could have been way better. Or maybe you just kind of avoided something, a bad relationship, and that just really was great for you compared to what it would have been. One way or the other, though, if you could judge people accurately, and I don't really mean morally, but I mean judge what you're going to do regarding other people. If you've heard me talk other times about judging, mostly you want to think of judging in terms of just judging what you're going to do. And if you're not needing to judge what you're going to do, then you could just drop the whole thing about judging somebody. But I'm now talking again, not about making judgments about other people in general, but judging what you're going to do with someone, right? Whether you're going to particularly focus on trying to have a relationship with that person or particularly not, or whatever. So you have the person, whatever that is, whatever that core there is, and then you have your perspective that gets mixed with the person, right? You might think, oh, that's this kind of person, or another part of your perspective that you're mixing with them is your particular experiences with the person, which is not the entire person, or even your experiences with someone, the sum total of your interactions, the emails you exchange, the when you meet them in real life, and the interactions you have there, and your impression of them visually, and the tone of their voice, and what they say, and all that stuff. The sum total of all of that, not only is it not the whole person, but you're adding something on to even the part that you're interacting with, right? Let's say you spent 10 total interactions with somebody, right? Like 5 emails and 2 phone calls and 3 real life interactions with a person, 10 total. Then that there is just a slice of the entire person's life, right? 10 interactions out of their entire life. But if you take those 10 slices, like 10 slices of bread, and you put them out of a whole, feast or whatever, and you take these 10 slices of bread and you stick them on a table all by themselves. Now, if you cover that bread with a whole bunch of gravy, and I hope I'm not making you hungry or anything here, or whatever, like butter and jelly, whatever you cover it with, not all at once, right? Probably don't want to use the jelly and the gravy on the same bread. But if you just cover it with a whole bunch of stuff and you eat the bread with all that stuff on it, then you still don't really know what the bread tastes like by itself. So, and you certainly don't know what if you have a whole big table with a huge buffet, you take 10 pieces of bread off that table, put it on a separate table, or put it on a plate in front of you, then dump a whole bunch of stuff on those 10 slices of bread, then to think that you know what's on the original buffet table is fairly bizarre, right? Because you took a small slice from that, and then you mixed a whole bunch of stuff with that slice that you took. And that's what's going on when you're interacting with people, right? But you're trying to figure out what's on the whole table, right? The original buffet table. And to think that your 10 experiences with someone, which is like just the bread with a whole bunch of stuff that you added onto it, hopefully these metaphors are making sense. But I think they probably do. If not, you can rewind it and hopefully they make sense the second time. But the reality is that we really think and act as if we do have a good sense of the person at that point, right? Within reason, people really don't have 10 experiences with someone and act and talk as if they haven't the slightest idea. And it isn't that they don't have the slightest idea, but in order to have some idea, you need to find some way to compensate for both all the stuff that you add and also to compensate for the fact that you've only been exposed to a few slices of that person's life. And if you're not finding a very effective way to compensate for that, then, or if you're just assuming that your brain's doing that by default, which a lot of people do, they're like, oh, I'm a good judge of character, blah, 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 right? If it doesn't help if you're a good judge of character 9 out of 10 times and you fail 1 out of 10 times and get in a close relationship that one time you fail. It only takes one divorce to fully wipe you out, right? Or a business partnership to go belly up, to really implode, to really be a huge problem. And remember, people can be pretty great people, but there's a lot of strain at some point, in a business or in a marriage, right? And so it needs to be particularly strong, or at least I don't know if strong is the perfect word, but integrous or whatever. So that whole thing I just talked about was a tangent is not quite the right word, but I just dealt with a related idea that's going to matter for this whole thing. But it has to do with the idea that when you look at something, let's call it A, all right, just the letter A. If you look at something like a person, all right, but whoever that person really is or whatever that means, you're constantly mixing a perspective, B, with A. Or even if you look at a tree, all right, you're not seeing, you think of it like you're seeing that tree, but you're not. You're seeing a lot that your brain is adding, right? The tree inherently doesn't have color, right? That color gets manufactured somewhere in the process of adding your perspective to the tree. So you experience, or the end result is A plus B, and not in an obvious fashion. Like, it's not like you see A and you see B and they're clearly distinct, and you just kind of get rid of, remove B back out, and you see, and you're left with a clear understanding of what you're originally looking at, right? Whatever a tree actually is, then, I mean, if you think of your own scientific knowledge, you might think, oh, well, it's ultimately a bunch of electrons and so forth. That's not necessarily accurate either. But if we just use that for the sake of example and think of a tree as being a bunch of electrons and neutrons and protons, making up atoms that then interact and bond and make up molecules, and then those molecules interact in a certain way, then you certainly don't see anything like that, right? Like the A plus B, so to speak, when you look at a tree, like your perspective plus those electrons and protons and neutrons and molecules and so forth. Your perspective plus those molecules does not look similar to the molecules, right? It's radically different than whatever the tree really is. And yet, we don't really think that way. We just think, okay, I'm looking at the tree, right? And that works in plenty of cases, but just if you've ever heard me talk about the law of association and how that's the law of implication versus the law of association, which is inaccurate, which is the kind of the default way that people think. Sometimes it sort of works and sometimes it doesn't. The problem is if you're stuck in the normal way of thinking outside of the law of implication methodology and model, if you're stuck in the normal way of thinking, then you don't know the difference of when you're seeing something in a way where whatever is off, whatever that extra you're adding to something, whatever that A plus B, whatever the error is in that, or the distortion, sometimes that distortion doesn't matter at all. All right, if I'm just trying to walk around and not bump into trees, then thinking that A plus B is the same as A, thinking that what I experience of the tree is the same as the molecule, so it's the same as whatever the tree really is, that doesn't matter, right? So thinking that A plus B is the same as A doesn't hurt me. I could still avoid bonking into the tree. And so there's plenty of life where that's the case. Same thing with meeting somebody. You might judge somebody accurately enough based on just a few interactions with them, plus mixing in your own assumptions and perspectives with your experience with that person. That might still give you a good enough indication of someone that you're able to interact with them and in a way that works just fine. The problem is then there's other times when it's totally inadequate and it totally screws you up, and you can't tell the difference if you live a life and you have a way of thinking where you're always sure that A plus B is the same, or AB is the same as A. But normally, again, that's how people experience the world. That by the time they get done adding their perspective to things, they think that's how the world is. And to see something, to add their perspective to something, to look at something, which means to like pour blue paint on the Invisible Man, and then see a man-shaped glob of blue paint. All right, they think that is the Invisible Man, like the blue paint covering the man, the whole thing, the whole conglomerate of the Invisible Man plus the blue paint. Normally, the way people think that A plus B, that is the man, that is A. A equals A plus B, which logically is just utterly false, right? A does not equal A plus B. But we fully go through life as if it does all the time, and we stack that, and we stack that, and we stack that. And I'm still not talking about the main idea here that I have to share with you. I'm sorry. Well, I'm not sorry, because this, of course, is all part of the preparing you and getting you set so you understand it properly and have the right breakthrough. It's directly related. It's an important, kind of, if we think it's steps, it is an important step one to understanding what I have for you. So we want to start to internalize more and more that A does not equal A plus B, that when our brain gives us a thought, normally people identify with their thoughts so closely that they say, I thought X, I thought whatever, I think that guy's a jerk, or I think that God exists, or I think God doesn't exist, or I think this political party is good, or I think I'm a smart person, or I think that's hard, or I think I'm not going to like that thing tomorrow. All right? When we have a thought about something, then our brain is adding its perspective, its processing, its assumptions, its beliefs, right? Its associations, its quote-unquote knowledge onto whatever the core of that thing is. When you're thinking about a task tomorrow, or whether you're really smart or a good person or whatever, any sort of thing. You're getting A plus B, but you're treating it as if it's A. You're getting a thought from your brain. You're treating it like it's true, or you're treating it like it's yours. And it's just an output of your brain that you can know that it's mixed with tainted stuff. Like every thought you have, unless it's processed with a very clear and accurate methodology that you worked on and understand perfectly and used, is potentially tainted to some degree. I mean, it's extraordinarily arrogant and ridiculous to think that all the ideas in your brain currently, they're all right. They're all correct. So if some of them aren't correct, and you don't, and then if some of them aren't correct, you don't know which ones those are. And so if that whole system, if that whole glop in there, some of it's correct and some of it isn't, is getting mixed with all your observations or thoughts or predictions about the world, then you know it's all tainted, right? So then it becomes pretty relevant to remove that taint. And it starts with understanding that when you're looking at A plus B, you're looking at A plus B. When you're looking at something with a perspective, and if that perspective on top of that could be flawed, but even if the perspective isn't flawed, you're still A plus B, even if B is perfect or not. Like, if B exists at all, if it's anything but nothing, then A plus B does not equal A, right? Like even if you add a theoretically perfect perspective to look at something, the only perfect perspective would basically, in a sense, be a zero, right? Be adding nothing to it and somehow experiencing what it is directly. And this may be very understandable. It may not. It may feel like it makes sense, but it doesn't make total sense, or you don't feel like it's totally integrated yet. That's expected. You don't have to feel that way. But we're most certainly making progress, because it opens you up to an extremely important concept. And just think how insane it is to walk around constantly looking at things, adding your perspective, and then thinking that you're looking at the actual thing. But that's how people imply all the time. That's people talk and think and act as if that's going on, that they're seeing actual things all the time as they are. And just to give you something very useful, if you do want to get to like the A, right? Like if you want to try to get the B out, get the perspective out, then the starting point is to look at something quickly, like in your mind generally, but physically or in your mind, from a whole bunch of different perspectives. So learning to think of things in a flexible way, to think about things from another person's point of view, right? If you're interacting with someone, think about what something might mean from their perspective. That's a great start, in addition to just from your own perspective. And then you can also even think about, well, what if I was a different type of person? How would I feel about what they're saying? If they're a different culture than you, you might think, what if I was as part of their culture? How would I feel about it? Or if you're thinking of a task, and this is still not the main idea I'm getting to, but again, it all helps. If you think about a task that you have coming up later, and you think, oh, it's going to be hard, or it's going to be easy, and then you might think, well, what if it wasn't easy? Then how would that be? Like, what kinds of things? And then maybe you need to prepare better. Maybe thinking it's easy isn't so good because you might not prepare properly. Or maybe thinking it's hard isn't going to be helpful either. There's no reason to think something's hard. If you think it's going to be hard, well, you might think, well, what would make it so it wouldn't be hard? Or maybe I'll feel more motivated later. Like if you think, oh, I don't want to do this thing in 3 hours. How ridiculous is that thought? That makes no sense. How can you not want to do something 3 hours from now? Now. How can right now? Because in 3 hours, do you always feel the exact same energy level and motivation and what you want to do at all times? No, right? Sometimes you feel more energetic. Sometimes, do you always feel like doing the exact same thing? At all times, do you just want to read one particular book or do one activity? Presumably not, right? Even if we think, well, men might want to often think about sex a zillion times a day or something like that. After a man has sex, then often at least for several hours, then they think about other stuff which they like. So, but seriously, clearly your mood changes, your motivation to do things changes. You want to do, like, hasn't it happened zillions of times in your life that you didn't think you wanted to do something, and then once you started doing it, that you were fine with it? And other times you were correct. Other times, either self-fulfilling prophecy or not, you thought you wouldn't like something, and then you went to do it, and you really did not like it. Right? That happens too. But isn't it true that there's plenty of times when we thought we didn't want to do something, then we go to do it, and then we don't. It's not so bad at all. But that's incredible, because people will have that happen to them, not like constantly, and still not even suspect. Like the 1,000th time that happens, they'll still be sitting there thinking of something they have to do 3 hours from now, sure that they already know how they're going to feel about that task 3 hours from now. Despite the fact that even though they've been right plenty of times, they've been wrong a zillion times too about how they're going to feel about something in 3 hours. You think at some point there would be some kind of humility, right? Like if I'm only right like half the time, at some point I might catch on and think, geez, I'm only right half the time. Or my brain is only right about that type of thing half the time. How about I just don't even give it any attention? If the weather report was wrong half the time, right? Like, why would I look it up? It wouldn't make much sense. And I certainly would make no sense to pretend like it's always going to be right. If it says it's going to rain hard, tomorrow, and half the time that's totally wrong, I mean, it wouldn't make any sense if I just behaved like it was just 100% right all the time. But people will, or at least should, see their brain being wrong about all sorts of predictions about the future constantly, especially about how they're going to feel about something or how hard or easy something's going to be. And yet they'll just like fully trust their brain the next time. It's amazing. So this now brings us to where we could start to talk kind of directly about our main idea here. Your happiness can be based. We can have maybe a different paradigm, we could say. There's a certain place to look for happiness, that if you look there, by default, your brain's going to sort of look somewhere else. It's going to keep you on a treadmill, and it's going to keep you kind of screwed up. And then by observation, it's kind of circular, where you'll think that is where happiness is. And what I mean by that is basically, by default, your brain is going to set goals, feel motivated based on standards and norms of the people around you in various areas. And then it's going to make you feel happy or unhappy based on how it perceives that you're progressing towards its various goals. So the goals are set kind of arbitrarily based upon the standards and norms of people around you. And then your happiness is based on your brain's assessment of trying to manipulate you into moving forward on goals. And it's going to give you emotional pain if it feels like you have setbacks towards your goals. And it's going to give you emotional pleasure if it feels like you're progressing towards the goals that it kind of set arbitrarily based on standards and norms around you. And that's how people live their lives. And it's ridiculous. But it's totally and utterly how people, like, it's just so ingrained in people. That is life for people. And if people reflect upon what makes them happy, they'll conclude, they won't see it the way I just said it, but they'll basically, they'll make observations based within that paradigm. And so they basically just have to pursue goals and feel a sense of progress in order to be happy. And that's so normal. And then people will pay a lot for things that they feel like will help them progress their goals, of course. Things will help them make more money or have what they want with relationships and health and all sorts of things. Or, little possessions and stuff that they feel like will help achieve their goals or get them around the standards and norms of the people around them. Kind of match up to those things. So the pursuit of happiness in the normal way of experiencing life is being a little kind of rat in a cage, given pleasure and given pain by your brain based on how good a job you're doing pursuing the goals that it adopts. And it adopts those by just looking around and judging the standards and norms of how things should be in different areas of life around you, based on basically how other people are doing or what seems normal or what seems like the way things are and so forth. In that paradigm, you can feel good sometimes, but you really can't win. You're really just set up to be like a rat on a treadmill. But there is another way that is just fully more accurate, better, and so forth. And it has to do with seeing things in terms of adaptability. When you, and we're constantly implying to ourselves that we're not going to adapt very much or very well, that we're not really going to change. And that's why, if you're not going to change, then you're really locked in. If you aren't going to change, then the environment becomes extraordinarily important for your happiness. Because the only way to progress is if things from outside of you get changed, right? If you make more money, like if you improve your external circumstances. So you're constantly in this rat race to control something, to control your environment, and oddly enough, you can't control your environment. You can influence your environment, but it's like lifting something that's like far away, or you don't fully control it. It's like if you're trying to get someone else to do something, you don't fully control another person, so it really can make you pretty tense. Like if you have a deadline and it really depends on someone else doing something, and you're not quite sure if they'll do it, and you can influence them, but it's ultimately sort of also up to them, then you'll probably feel pretty tense, right? You probably feel tense even thinking about that, right? Like there's a deadline, you're like, this person has to do this, I've got to get him to do it. And again, like you have some amount of control, enough. If you knew you had no control whatsoever, you might be able to let go, right? But you're like, oh, there's some way that I can kind of force or get or influence this person to do this. But it's really not exactly in my control. So there's this constant sort of sense of needing to control something that you don't fully control. And you're in the exact same situation with your own brain, by the way, where you don't fully control your own mind. Sometimes people think at first that law of implication is about achieving, like perfect control over your mind or your environment, because they assume that that's what they want, right? They're so immersed in the paradigm of controlling things that they can't really control. Their environment, their own mind, because your own mind is actually in your environment. It's not you. That they assume that anything that has to do with happiness or results has to involve more control over your environment or your own mind. And life works a little bit differently than that. So instead, if you can understand the world in terms of adaptability, the more adaptable you feel. See, really your happiness is determined by both your sense of how favorable the environment is, combined, I'll write this on a slide in a moment actually, combined with the sense of how adaptable you are, whoever you is, whatever you identify with, your kind of vehicle or yourself. And the sum total of those is going to give you your sense of happiness. So let me put this on a slide. Okay, so here we go. This is, I have a lot more to say after this, but this is really extremely major. All right, there's 3 places where you can kind of add in order to get your sense of happiness. And this is generally discounted and ignored, and we're constantly implying to ourselves very strongly that we're not adaptable. Hardly at all. As a matter of fact, this line here, it's kind of one or the other, in a sense. Not completely. I'll need to explain further. But so if this becomes invisible, this true adaptability of yourself, I need to get to an example real quick here, or kind of a scenario real quick, but I'll just finish this sentence. If this is invisible, and let's just assume that it is for a moment, then a person's happiness is generally based on their perceived strength, intelligence, or resources, and including that they'll feel unhappy if money gets taken away, or if they find out that they're less intelligent than they hoped, or if something about their strength, either the strength of their relationships or physical strength, whatever, right? Just something about, so how strong they are in life, strong, smart, resources, money, power, whatever. You can you can get rid of all this and replace it with power if you want, whatever. So, and then the perceived favorability of the environment. So normally you ask someone if they're happy, and they'll generally think about whether they think that they are reasonably powerful, and or how favorable the environment coming up for their like the near or mid and long-term future is. And then that's where their sense of happiness is going to come from. This is both in general if someone reflects on it, and also in the moment. Someone's going to feel they'll feel unhappy if like an unfavorable thing is going on in the environment, like they're coming up to the dentist, or they have a difficult task, or they feel confused. Sorry, if they feel confused and they feel like they're not strong right then, even though that's wrong. Feeling confused is not an indication that you are not intelligent or strong, but it's perceived that way normally, which is a real problem because confusion is right on the path to learning a new thing. So it's very important for people to keep this up, this perception that they're strong, they're intelligent, and important for them. They don't want to see or hear of things that diminish their perception of this, and they'll feel bad if they have a perceived diminishment of any of these things. And also it's really important to have a favorable environment, and unfavorable things that happen, bad news, things like that, right, as they call it, will hit them particularly strongly, because this is like all there is for their happiness. The interesting thing is that you can fully focus here and get more and more kind of understanding of this, which will end up creating what amounts to a habit of this. And if there's ways to understand this, and then it creates a whole kind of upward spiral where you understand adaptability more, you build it for real more, you then apply it more in your thinking, and it just gets integrated and ingrained within your whole way of dealing with life. And if you focus on adaptability, and this is normally invisible to people for the most part, then all of a sudden your supposed strength, you'll have a real strength based on genuine understanding. But that isn't in any danger. You can't have setbacks in understanding, literally. When you gain understanding, it's like permanent and powerful and untouchable. So it's true strength. So you'll build a true strength that can't be diminished. So you're not in danger of waking up one morning and having a problem with it. For the moment, we'll ignore like if you have like a major mental disorder or that sort of thing. Right? Obviously, if you just fully get killed, then that's a separate issue, and then we're dealing with what happens in life after death and all that. But let's just deal with our practical life that we're reasonably living right now. Then, when you gain understanding, you're just going to wake up tomorrow, and that's not in jeopardy. No one could steal it or hurt it or hack into it or whatever. So, in various ways, you can build true strength. There's true strength in certain ways that you can conduct relationships and act within relationships, where people will genuinely care about you and you'll genuinely care about them, and there's a true strength there too. And they're not really in danger. Like I'm not really in danger of waking up tomorrow and having people that I'm close to just turn on me. And so there's a truth and reality to that that's real. It's based on understanding, once again. So you can just build here and understand here and focus here, and your sense of happiness will basically be untouchable. And you will also be far more effective and efficient, because here people are just scared all the time. And so they're always thinking, oh, this task later is going to be hard. When you focus on adaptability, you don't think things like a task is going to be hard. It's not part of your paradigm. You just understand that you need that methodology and mental model, like we do in law of implication. I talk about it's a methodology and mental model. Methodologies make you adaptable. The correct understanding of the right mental models makes you adaptable. So you go into a task and you understand how to go about doing it. And that's the breakthrough methodology is similar. If you go into, if you're up against a fortress that you're trying to break through, and you think that you have to linearly make progress every second, then you feel frustrated and confused. But if you just understand that you need to poke around and build a vehicle or something to break through into it, then you just go do that. And so you approach tasks with a breakthrough mentality and an adaptability mentality, and you just poke around and you deal with them. And you know you can deal with them. And it's not about how fast you deal with them or that you have to make linear forward progress every second. Life isn't like that. Instead, you break through and you consolidate. And that breakthrough series makes people feel happier about life because it increases their understanding and their sense of true adaptability, even though I didn't discuss that word in there. But as you, so here's where you can focus. Here and now we'll discuss this for a while as I continue. And I'll point one last thing out in a moment, and then we'll end this particular video. But then I'll discuss it some more. And then you can get out of worrying about these two things because these are really beyond. This is beyond your control. This is too, your own kind of. And the trouble is this particular both of these, but you can see how if you really want to believe that you're already intelligent and you're already right about things. Is that something you like in someone else, where they just need to believe that they're already intelligent, already right about everything, right? It's very, or if they seem to have a setback with a resource, they fly into a panic or they get really upset. It's not something you want in someone else, right? And so you don't want it in yourself either, obviously. If you're busy trying to hang on to the idea that you're currently right about everything or you're currently so intelligent, and just, it's not that I believe that I'm intelligent either. I believe that what matters is a methodology and is a methodology for building understanding, and then for using that methodology to construct a correct mental model of how existence works, right? And particularly of how our mind works, how consciousness works, how we consciously interact with our mind and our environment and other people, and things like love and caring and faith and so forth. So that's what I think matters, and I seek after that to a good degree. I don't think about whether I'm intelligent or not. It's not relevant in general. I might want to identify that I've developed particular skills, so I'm aware that I have those skills, but I still don't want to think that, it's all about that I'm already so great at those things, right? It doesn't help to think you're no good at carpentry. If you're quite good at it, then it's worth knowing that so you can do it and so forth. But it doesn't ever need to bleed over into arrogance or being scared of finding out that you are wrong about something. If you're very good at painting, it's fine to be aware of that, so then you can sell your paintings and do painting. But you don't want to have an attitude towards it where you're scared to find out how to improve, or that you're wrong about one particular thing about painting, right? Then that's only better to do. Okay, let's look at one final thing here. Slide number 2, actually. That's what I had planned. Let's take a moment. I'm just going to read what's on here. Let's take a moment to start to notice something odd. Bad is always something that's right around the corner, just out of your vision, so to speak. It's never really here. The same thing goes with like difficult, like with something being too hard, like regarding making money or learning something. Things are always too hard, like around the corner. They're never quite too hard right now. Let's suppose someone gets into the OMG coaching members area, and there's a lot of stuff to learn about search engine optimization, and let's say they come to the conclusion that it's too hard. Well, is it too hard right this second? Like, let's say they're watching a video and they're like, this is too hard. Well, what's too hard, right? And they're sitting in front of the computer and they're listening, right? So is that like too hard? Can they not handle that? Are they about to like a steam about to come out of their ears and their brain going to blow up or something like that, right? They're just sitting in a chair listening to a video. Is that too hard? It's funny though, right? When you look at it that way. But a person can literally be doing that and say, this is too hard. That's extraordinary, right? But it feels so real, right? They're just sure of it. And reasonably so. I mean, we can identify with that. I mean, we've all been in that position. I have, right? Where we're doing something, but if we just look right there and stop having it be so occluded or so covered up with all of our assumptions and feelings about the future and projecting into the future and the past and all these kind of projections and perspectives that we're glomming onto it. If we just take a look at what's really going on in that moment, of course it's not too hard, right? It almost becomes hilarious, right? You just kind of clear that out for a second and gosh, I'm sitting in front of my computer listening to a video. That isn't too hard. If I'm trying, like, I have to just be arbitrarily deciding that I'm supposed to understand something all right now, yeah, then that's too hard because you can't control that, right? Maybe it's going to take a few days of using the proper learning breakthrough methodology in order to get that concept. Or maybe it'll just take a few more minutes. But sure, it's too hard to learn the whole video or to understand it all right in that moment. But that's just arbitrary. That's just trying to accomplish an arbitrary thing all at once. It's like looking at a hamburger and saying, oh my gosh, there's no way I could eat that. And someone across the table, you look at you funny, and you're like, well, if I shove that all in my mouth at once, how am I going to swallow it? And they're like, what are you talking about? You just start biting it, right? But if you just somehow just forgot that and just look at it and are sure you have to swallow it all right now, just kind of arbitrarily, then all of a sudden it's too hard. And so people are constantly concluding that something is hard or it's going to be painful or too difficult or something and just not doing it. And of course, taking action ultimately, it's kind of, I stay away from saying this because it's overly simplistic, but in a certain way, it's utterly true that most all of what people that are making lots of money are doing is they're taking action, right? More than being smart, they're just freaking doing it, right? And definitely they need to be taking the correct actions. It doesn't help to just rush around doing dumb things a lot and just, a lot of action isn't necessarily great. I certainly think it's great to plan properly and so forth. But certainly the main problem that a lot of people are going to have when it comes to making money is they're just kind of paralyzed, right? They're just not doing enough that they really kind of know that they need to be doing. And that's all that paralysis is going to come from what I'm talking about right here. They're worried they're going to feel bad. They're worried that it's going to be hard. They're worried they're confused and so forth. But notice that it's just not hard in the moment. And then how about bad? When someone's like, oh, I'm unhappy, or this is bad, or I feel bad today, if they just stop and look at that exact moment, they're probably pretty comfortable and everything's basically fine, right? It's always like just around the corner that the bad is. Like, oh, well, the bad's there somewhere, right? Like, oh, well, I'll have to do this thing later, and I'm going to feel bad about that. So I kind of want to get some extra bad out of the situation, so I'm going to feel bad right now. In addition to that, I'm sure I'm going to feel bad later. I'm just going to feel bad about it now also. And then later I'm going to feel bad about thinking about how I did it earlier, And again, that's really arrogant because how do you know in 3 hours? And plus that, now this is important. When you think that something's going to be hard that you're going to do later, and even if it's a few minutes from now, then you're implying to yourself that you can't adapt, that you can't change, that you can't feel differently or act differently or think differently or understand more 3 hours from now when that task comes, or even a few minutes from now. Instead, you want to find a way, and I'll discuss this in the future as I continue with this series, but you want to understand what's implying to yourself that you can't adapt, and you want to understand how to imply that you can adapt. And as you start to have the attitude and then the implications that you can adapt, which is also correct, it's both self-fulfilling and it's ultimately very correct. Right? There's just a method to being adaptable, and all you need to do is understand and use that method, and then you are adaptable, and then you're just happy all the time, and you're way more effective. And that's all it takes, is to focus on adaptability, both believing it, doing it, and having it be true. Perceived adaptability is fine, but it's too much like just perceived strength and intelligence. That's why I didn't put the word perceived in there, because adaptability really ultimately has to basically be true. Otherwise, you're just back into fooling yourself, which is basically back here in this perceived thing. So adaptability is true adaptability. Understanding is true understanding. False understanding isn't understanding at all, or perceived understanding isn't understanding at all. If you perceive you understand and you're correct about that, then that's true understanding. That's fine. But basically, false understanding is not understanding. So there's no reason to put perceived adaptability, because perceived adaptability will prove itself out to be false really so fast that it's not going to lead to happiness. And if it's perceived but it's false, it means you're fooling yourself, which takes some sort of effort. Like it takes, there's some sort of internal conflict that's going to have to go on for you to fool yourself. So it's not going to get you where you want to go, even in the moment. So this isn't really about fooling yourself. This stuff mostly is, because favorability of the environment even is mostly an illusion anyway. We so often think, oh, things are good in the environment, and then they turn out not to be as good as we thought, or we think that they weren't so good, but they turn out to be fine. So this is mostly, we get this wrong all the time anyway, about how good the environment's going to be later on, or 5 minutes from now, or whatever. But we focus here, and we're going to be utterly happier. It's just a whole different paradigm. So it's qualitatively happier. It's not a linear thing. You don't just feel a little bit happier. Your life just gets transformed, and you're so much more effective too. And again, it's all going to come down to having a methodology for adaptability, which then feeds in on a belief in adaptability and a faith in adaptability and understanding of adaptability. And you just focus there. This all starts to become irrelevant, which means once you can stop trying to believe that you're so rich and you're so smart and you're so strong, then you can actually fix the problems in your belief system and your strength and your resources. And you don't have to prove that you're so rich by spending your money all the time, right? So I don't mean that you do that, but a lot of people, do that, where they're having to prove that they're rich by spending money, and then they don't even have money because they spent it, but at least they're looking like they're rich, including to themselves. I say, oh, I didn't buy that for other people, I bought it for myself. Sure, I believe you. You bought it so you could believe that you're so rich and you have so many resources because you spent your money. But it's the exact opposite, right? You're spending resources in order to believe that you have them, so you feel strong and you feel happy. And then same thing with intelligence. People exactly take themselves backwards by trying to prove that they're already intelligent. Right? Who's going to have better understanding about life? And who do you want to have in your life? Who do you want to have relationships with? Someone who's obsessed with proving they're already so smart, or someone who's very interested in getting their ideas straight, in fixing the ideas in their brain so that they get right for the future? Right? Obviously the latter. So trying to perceive that you're intelligent and wealthy or powerful, it just takes you backwards. It's the exact opposite. It makes you actually less strong, and so you're on this negative treadmill, and it just sucks. So that's going to be the key to happiness, or at least removing a major block, or basically having happiness, and also removing a major block to effectiveness. So it essentially is the key to happiness, and it removes a major block to effectiveness and efficiency. And so we will continue in the next video, although we pretty much got to the heart of it right now, which is pretty cool.